The 3-year-old heir ripped the sacred Moonfire Circlet from Casha Valentina Petrova's perfectly crowned head and hurled it across Moonstone Plaza. 500 Wolves Pack warriors, visiting alphas, foreign dignitaries, watched in collective horror as the ancient circlet, untouched by rejection for 5 centuries, clattered down marble steps and skidded to a stop at the feet of an Omega servant girl still wearing kitchen grease on her trembling hands. Alpha Marcus Aurelius Constantine stood frozen on the ceremonial platform, his arms still extended toward his chosen Luna, the sacred words still dying on his lips. The Moonfire Circlet had never been refused. Not once in 500 years of Silver Crest history. Legends said it would glow when placed upon the head of a true Luna, but no living wolf had ever witnessed such a thing. Until now. Because little Aurelius wasn't finished. The toddler twisted free from his father's paralyzed grip, climbed down from the platform, and walked through the stunned silence of the plaza. His bare feet padded across cold marble. Every alpha, every elder, every wolf of rank watched a 3-year-old child pick up the most sacred artifact in pack history with his tiny hands. He walked straight to the terrified Omega and placed the crown on her dark hair. "This is the real Luna," he announced, his small voice carrying across the silent plaza. "The moon goddess told me." The Moonfire Circlet began to glow. Golden light pulsed from the ancient metal, soft at first, then blazing, radiating outward like dawn breaking across the pack. The light pulsed in rhythm with the Omega's heartbeat. Every wolf present felt it, the presence of something vast, something ancient, something divine pressing down upon them. The moon goddess herself had spoken, and she had chosen an Omega. If you're already hooked and need to know how an invisible kitchen servant becomes Luna of the most powerful pack in the territory, subscribe right now, because what happens next will shatter everything you thought you knew about fate, about worth, and about the families we choose versus the ones destiny forces upon us. Drop your city in the comments. I'm sending you strength. You're going to need it for this journey. Let me take you back. 6 months before the crown chose her. 6 months before the golden light. 6 months before a child's prayer changed everything. Back to when Alpha Marcus believed he was honoring his dead mate's dying wish. Back to when Casha Valentina Petrova seemed like the perfect political solution. Back to when Levvenia Aurelia was still invisible, just another Omega scrubbing floors in Hearthstone Hall, dreaming of nothing because dreaming required hope, and hope was a luxury servants couldn't afford. Marcus Aurelius Constantine was not a young alpha. At 34, he ruled Silver Crest with the weight of old grief carved into his features. A scar traced the left side of his jaw, a memento from the western border skirmish that had taken Levvenia's parents and nearly taken him. His wolf was powerful, his judgment sound, his pack prosperous, but his bed had been cold for 3 years, and his son had stopped smiling. Marcus Aurelius Constantine had not slept through the night in 3 years. He stood alone in the Alpha's den, watching dawn bleed through the eastern windows, and remembered the morning his world ended. Isla had been radiant even in death, her golden hair spread across sweat-soaked pillows, her hand growing cold in his grip, her final breath spent on promises she made him swear to keep. "Love again," she had whispered, her wolf already fading from her eyes. "Give Aurelius a mother. Give the pack a Luna. Promise me, Marcus. Promise you won't let grief make you forget how to live." He had promised. He had held their newborn son against his chest, and sworn on everything sacred that he would honor her dying wish. 3 years later, that promise had become a chain around his throat. He loved Aurelius with a ferocity that frightened him sometimes. The boy had Isla's eyes, that same impossible shade of amber that caught the light like honey. Marcus would die for his son. Kill for him, burn the world to ash if anyone threatened a single hair on his head. But finding the boy a mother, finding himself a Luna, every time he tried, Isla's ghost stood between him and any woman who might fill the void. His wolf howled in protest at the mere thought of another. And so the years passed, and Aurelius grew, and the pack whispered about their unmated alpha. And Marcus pretended not to hear. Then Casha Valentina Petrova arrived. Beta Dimitri's daughter came to Silver Crest on diplomatic business. And within a week, the council was practically salivating. She was everything a Luna should be: beautiful, educated, politically connected. Her bloodline was impeccable. Her knowledge of pack law was extensive. She charmed the elders with her grace and impressed the warriors with her tactical mind. She's everything the pack needs, Beta Titus declared in the stone circle room, the other council members nodding like puppets on strings. An alliance with Crimson Veil would strengthen our northern borders. Her father controls trade routes we've coveted for decades. Gamma Quintus Blackwood agreed. Elder Thaddeus Stoneheart agreed. Every voice of authority in Silver Crest agreed. Everyone except a 3-year-old boy who couldn't explain why he screamed when Casha entered a room. Aurelius hid behind Marcus's legs whenever she approached. He threw his favorite picture book at her head during their second dinner together. He cried himself to sleep and called for his mama, not the one standing in their home with her perfect smile, but the one buried in Memorial Grove beneath the silver birch trees. He's grieving, Casha assured Marcus, her hand cool on his arm. Children resist change. He'll adjust. Marcus wanted to believe her. He needed times to believe her, because the alternative meant his son saw something he couldn't. And what kind of alpha was blind to threats in his own home? So he dismissed the tantrums as grief. Ignored the way Aurelius flinched from Casha's touch. Told himself that time would heal what words could not. For 3 weeks, Casha was patient. Gentle. Even. She brought Aurelius sweets and spoke to him in soft tones, and never once raised her voice. Then the sweetness curdled. The boy needs discipline, she told Marcus one evening, her mask slipping just enough to reveal something cold beneath. You're too soft with him. He's the heir to Silver Crest, he can't be coddled forever. Against his every instinct, Marcus tried. He enforced stricter bedtimes, denied Aurelius extra dessert, spoke firmly when the boy cried for his mother. 4 days. That's how long he lasted. 4 days of watching his son withdraw into silence. 4 days of nightmares so violent that Aurelius woke screaming, his small hands clawing at shadows. 4 days of the light dying in those amber eyes that looked so much like Isla's. On the 5th day, Marcus abandoned the approach entirely and held his son until dawn, whispering apologies into his hair, but he didn't question Casha. He didn't ask why her methods had broken something in his child. He didn't listen to the only voice that mattered, the one too young to articulate what it sensed but old enough to know the truth, and that failure would cost him everything. What made a 3-year-old see what a powerful alpha couldn't? What truth was Aurelius trying to scream into existence? Stay with me, because while Marcus was ignoring his son's warnings, someone else in Silver Crest was living a nightmare he couldn't even imagine. Levvenia Aurelia had learned to be invisible before she learned to read. She was 7 years old when the western border skirmish took everything: her mother's warm hands braiding her hair, her father's deep laugh rumbling through their small cottage, the feeling of being someone's whole world. The rogues came at dawn. By sunset, Levvenia was an orphan, and the pack had one more mouth to feed that nobody particularly wanted. The communal housing in the servants' wing taught her the only lesson that mattered. Survival meant silence. Keep your head down. Don't make eye contact with wolves of rank. Be useful, be quiet, be times, invisible times, and maybe, just maybe, you'll live long enough to see another sunrise. 15 years later, Levvenia had perfected the art of not existing. She worked the central kitchens in Hearthstone Hall, rising before dawn and collapsing long after midnight. 12 hours on good days, 16 on bad ones. Her hands were perpetually raw from scalding water and lye soap, her back a constant ache from hunching over prep tables, her feet swollen from standing on stone floors that never warmed no matter the season. But there were small joys, if she looked hard enough. The rhythm of kneading bread dough, push, fold, turn, was almost meditative. The way flour dusted the air like snow. The satisfaction of pulling perfect loaves from the ovens, golden and fragrant. And Octavia, the head cook who had taken Levvenia under her wing years ago, whose gruff kindness was the closest thing to maternal love she had known since her mother's death. "You're daydreaming again," Octavia would scold, but her eyes were always soft. "Hands moving, girl. Bread won't bake itself." It wasn't much of a life, but it was times hers asterisk. Then Alpha Marcus announced his engagement to Casha Valentina Petrova, and even that small piece shattered. The Luna ceremony preparations fell upon the Omegas like an avalanche. 12-hour days became 20. Sleep became a luxury. Every corner of Hearthstone Hall had to gleam. Every meal had to be perfected. Every flower arrangement had to be flawless. Because the future Luna of Silver Crest deserved nothing less than absolute perfection. Casha moved into the pack house 6 weeks before the ceremony. That was when the real nightmare began. "This floor isn't clean enough." Her voice was ice wrapped in silk. "Do it again. These flowers are wilting. Replace them immediately." That servant looked at me directly. "See that she's disciplined." The whispers spread through the Omega quarters like wildfire. Mira, a shy girl who worked the laundry, had been berated so viciously for a wrinkled tablecloth that she'd collapsed in tears and couldn't stop shaking for hours. Dorian, one of the older servants, had been dismissed entirely for moving too slowly in the hallways, 30 years of service erased because he'd offended the future Luna's delicate sensibilities. And the worst rumor of all, Casha had suggested to Alpha Marcus that the pack should consider streamlining the Omega population. Too many mouths to feed, she'd argued. Too many useless wolves consuming resources that could go to warriors. To wolves who actually times mattered asterisk. Octavia pulled Levvenia aside one night, her weathered face grim. "She's going to make our lives hell," the old cook whispered. "That woman has no heart, no compassion. The moon goddess help us all when she wears the crown." Levvenia said nothing. She never said anything. But for the first time in 15 years, she felt something other than resignation stir in her chest. Something hot and dangerous. Something that felt almost like time's anger asterisk. How dare this woman waltz into their home and treat them like vermin? How dare she speak of streamlining lives as though Omegas were cattle to be culled? How dare she? Levvenia crushed the feeling before it could fully form. Anger was a luxury Omegas couldn't afford. Anger got you noticed. And getting noticed got you killed. So she swallowed her rage, bowed her head, and kept scrubbing floors that would never be clean enough. What choice did she have? What choice did any of them have? But while Levvenia was learning to hate in silence, something unexpected was about to happen. A chance encounter between an invisible servant and a lonely little boy would set in motion events that even the moon goddess herself had been waiting centuries to witness. Levvenia heard the laughter before she saw its source. She was carrying linens through the eastern corridor, arms laden with freshly pressed sheets for the guest chambers, when the sound drifted through an open window. Pure, unbridled joy. A child's giggle, bright as bells, followed by a deeper rumble of amusement that she didn't immediately recognize. Curiosity was dangerous for Omegas, but her feet carried her to the window anyway. The Serenity Gardens stretched below, all manicured hedges and blooming moonflowers. And there, in a patch of grass where no one of rank should ever lower themselves, was Alpha Marcus Aurelius Constantine on his hands and knees, his son perched on his back like a tiny conquering warrior. "Faster, Papa, faster." Marcus obliged, crawling through the grass with exaggerated galloping motions while Aurelius shrieked with delight. The Alpha's ceremonial dignity was nowhere to be seen. His hair was disheveled, his fine tunic stained with grass, and his face, that stern, scarred face that made grown wolves tremble, was split by a grin so genuine it transformed him entirely. Levvenia forgot to breathe. This was love. Real love. The kind she barely remembered from before the border skirmish, from a time when her father had swung her onto his shoulders and her mother had laughed at them both. For one stolen moment, watching this powerful Alpha become a horse for his giggling son, Levvenia felt something crack open in her chest. Then Casha's voice shattered everything. "Rolling in the dirt like a common wolf, Marcus? Really?" The future Luna stood at the garden's edge, immaculate in pale silk. her lip curled with barely concealed disgust. Marcus's joy evaporated instantly. His expression shuddered, the warmth replaced by something guarded and almost ashamed. "We were just playing," he said, rising and brushing grass from his knees. "The heir to Silver Crest should be learning protocol, not frolicking asterisk. Casha's gaze swept over Aurelius with cold assessment. "Send him to his nursemaid. We have matters to discuss." Aurelius clung to his father's leg, those amber eyes going wide and fearful. Marcus hesitated. Levvenia saw the conflict flash across his face, but then he gently pried his son's fingers loose. "Go on, little one. Papa will come find you later." The boy's shoulders slumped as a servant led him away. Casha stepped aside as he passed, angling her body to avoid even accidental contact with the child, as though he were something contaminated. Levvenia's hands tightened on the linens until her knuckles went white. The anger she'd been suppressing for weeks surged up her throat like bile. She started watching after that, noticing. Casha's dual nature became impossible to ignore once you knew to look. She was honey and grace with the council members, all demure smiles and diplomatic charm, but servants who crossed her path received nothing but ice and cruelty. Two faces. Then came the evening Levvenia heard what she was never meant to hear. She was delivering fresh towels to the Alpha's den when voices drifted from behind a partially closed door. Casha's cool tones. And another voicemail, older, familiar. "Beta, Dimitri. Her father, the boy is an obstacle," Casha was saying. "Once I've given Marcus proper heirs, we'll send Aurelius to the Eastern Academy. Boarding school will distance him appropriately, and if Marcus resists, he won't. Not once our pups arrive. The boy will fade into irrelevance." A footnote. 1. Don't frime. 1 times seconds. A footnote. Levvenia's blood turned to ice. But the next words were worse. "And the Omega situation we discussed. I've already planted the seeds. Reduce their numbers gradually. Marcus won't notice until it's done. Too soft-hearted to see what's necessary." Levvenia fled before she could be discovered, her heart hammering so violently she thought it might crack her ribs. A child in danger. An entire class of wolves marked for elimination. And she was the only one who knew. But who would believe in Omega? Who would take her word against the future Lunas? She was invisible, powerless, nothing, so Levvenia kept silent. She bowed her head, carried her linens, and pretended she hadn't heard the future Luna plotting to destroy a little boy's life. But she couldn't forget. She would never forget. The secret burned inside her like poison. But fate wasn't finished weaving its web. Because in 3 days' time, Levvenia would meet that lonely little boy face to face and everything would change. Levvenia had no business being in the family wing. The head cook had thrust a silver tray of pastries into her hands with hurried instructions delivered to the private dining room. Don't dawdle, don't speak unless spoken to, don't exist any more than absolutely necessary. A simple task. In and out. Invisible? As always. But then she heard the crying. It was soft, muffled, coming from behind a door left slightly ajar. The kind of crying that a child does when they've learned that no one is coming to comfort them, when they've given up on being heard. Levvenia knew that sound. She had made it herself, 15 years ago, in the cold dormitories of the servants' wing. Asterisk. Keep walking, asterisk. Her survival instincts screamed. Asterisk. This isn't your concern. You'll be punished. Asterisk. Her feet stopped anyway. Through the crack in the door, she saw him. Little Aurelius, curled in the corner of his vast chamber, clutching a worn stuffed wolf to his chest. His small body shook with sobs he was trying desperately to silence. "Want Mama back," he whimpered into the toy's threadbare fur. "Want real Mama. New Mama is mean. She doesn't love Leo. Nobody loves Leo." Something inside Levvenia shattered. Before she could stop herself, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. The boy's head snapped up, amber eyes wide with fear then confusion. An Omega servant. In his chamber. Surely this was wrong. Surely she would be punished. "I'm sorry," Levvenia whispered, kneeling so she was at his level. "I heard you crying. I couldn't just walk past." Aurelius clutched his stuffed wolf tighter. "Lupus says nobody cares about Leo. Lupus is wrong." The words came before she could consider the danger. "Your papa loves you more than anything in this world, I've seen it. The way he looks at you like you're his whole heart walking around outside his body." The boy's lip trembled. "Really? Really. I promise." Silence stretched between them, the invisible servant girl and the heir to Silver Crest. Then Aurelius asked the question that would change everything. "Will you be my friend?" Levvenia should have said no. Should have bowed and retreated, and pretended this moment never happened. "Yes," she breathed instead. "I'll be your friend." Aurelius's face transformed. The grief didn't disappear, but something else bloomed alongside it. "Hope, secret friends," he insisted. "New mama says friends make you weak. She can't know." "Secret friends," Levvenia agreed. Over the next 3 days, the little boy sought her out constantly. He found her in corridors, in the gardens, in the kitchens where Octavia raised eyebrows but said nothing. Quick moments stolen between duties, a smile here, a whispered story there. Small rebellions against his loneliness. On the 3rd day, in the Serenity Gardens, Aurelius pressed something into her hand, a dandelion. Wilted, imperfect, plucked by tiny fingers. "For you," he said solemnly, "because you're my friend." Levvenia's vision blurred with tears, the girl from the kitchens. She spun, heart seizing in her chest. Alpha Marcus stood on the garden path. Arms crossed, expression unreadable. How long had he been watching? Levvenia dropped to her knees immediately. "Alpha, I forgive me. I didn't mean to." "Stop." His voice was firm but not cruel. "Stand up." She obeyed on trembling legs, waiting for the punishment that would surely follow. But Marcus was looking at his son, at the dandelion in her hand, at something invisible that passed between them. "My son has been struggling," he said quietly. "Everyone in this pack claims to care for him, but he's been drowning in plain sight. You showed him he matters. You saw him." Marcus's gray eyes met hers met times them, as though she were a person rather than furniture. "I'm told you're assigned to kitchen duties during the ceremony. I'm changing that. You'll attend as a guest." Levvenia's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. "Everyone deserves to witness history," Marcus continued. "Even those who work in the shadows." Encloder. It was the kindest thing anyone of rank had ever said to her. That night, in her narrow bed, Levvenia held the wilted dandelion against her heart like it was spun from gold. For the first time in 15 years, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she mattered to someone. She had no idea that in 3 days' time, that same little boy would place a crown on her head and change the fate of an entire pack. The ceremony was coming, and with it, the impossible. The day dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for a Luna ceremony. Levvenia had worked through the night in Hearthstone Hall alongside the other kitchen staff, her hands moving on autopilot as she arranged platters of roasted meats and delicate pastries. She'd caught maybe 2 hours of sleep before dawn broke, her body screaming for rest that wouldn't come. This was the biggest event Silver Crest had hosted in years, and everything had to be perfect. At noon, Octavia found her elbow deep in dishwater, her raw hands trembling with exhaustion. "The Alpha requested you be allowed to watch the ceremony," the old woman said, her weathered face split between amusement and bewilderment. "I don't know what you did to earn that privilege, girl, but don't waste it. Go change into something clean, and get yourself to the ceremonial grounds. You have 1 hour." Levvenia stared at her in disbelief, but Octavia shooed her away with a flour-dusted hand. "The dishes will still be here when you get back. Now go." So Levvenia washed her face and hands, changed into the only decent dress she owned, a simple gray thing that had seen better days, and made her way to Moonstone Plaza with her heart hammering against her ribs. The ceremonial grounds had been transformed into something magical. The raised marble platform gleamed in the sunlight, surrounded by hundreds of pack members and guests in their finest clothes. Ancient silver birch trees framed the scene, their leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. Levvenia slipped into the very back of the crowd, making herself as small and unnoticeable as possible. She was acutely aware of the high-ranking wolves around her, their jewelry glittering, their confidence absolute. She felt painfully out of place in her shabby dress with kitchen grease still under her fingernails, but she'd promised Aurelius she'd be here. And somehow, that mattered more than her discomfort. The ceremony began with traditional pack blessings. Elders spoke in reverent tones about the sacred bond between Alpha and Luna. Musicians played ancient songs that made Levvenia's chest ache with their beauty. Dancers performed rituals that dated back centuries, their movements precise and meaningful. Then Marcus appeared, and the entire crowd fell silent. He looked magnificent in his traditional ceremonial robes of deep black and silver, the colors of Silver Crest Pack. His dark hair had been pulled back, revealing the strong lines of his face and the scars he wore like badges of honor. But his eyes, those golden eyes that had looked at his son with such tenderness in Serenity Gardens, looked haunted. This was a man fulfilling a duty, not embracing a destiny. Casha appeared next, and Levvenia heard the crowd's collective intake of breath. She was stunning in her ceremonial gown of pure white embroidered with gold thread that caught the light with her every movement. Her auburn hair had been arranged in an elaborate style, woven with flowers and jewels. She looked like a goddess descending to earth, perfect and untouchable, and utterly certain of her place in the world. But Levvenia, standing in the back where no one noticed her, saw what others might have missed. The calculating gleam in Casha's eyes as she surveyed the crowd. The way her smile was a fraction too wide, too rehearsed. The way she looked at Marcus, not with love or even affection, but with triumph. This wasn't a commitment. This was a coronation. High Priestess Selene Moonshadow led them through the ancient vows, her voice carrying across the plaza with the weight of 5 centuries of tradition. Casha spoke her promises with honey-sweet conviction. Marcus responded with the required words, but his voice was flat, mechanical, the voice of someone going through the motions. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The crowning. Marcus held Aurelius in his arms as tradition dictated the future Alpha's presence required during the crowning, a symbol of continuity and blessing from one generation to the next. Levvenia could see the little boy tense as High Priestess Selene lifted the Moonfire Circlet from its velvet cushion. The ancient gold gleamed in the sunlight, heavy with history and divine blessing. "With this crown I name you Luna of Silver Crest," the priestess intoned, her words echoing across the silent plaza. "May you lead with wisdom, protect with strength, and love with your whole heart." Marcus reached for the crown, ready to place it on Casha's head as tradition required. And then Aurelius moved. The 3-year-old twisted in his father's arms with surprising strength, his small face contorted with determination. "No, Papa, not her, not her," the crowd gasped. Marcus tried to soothe his son, embarrassment flooding his features. But Aurelius wasn't listening. With the singular focus of a toddler on a mission, he lunged for the crown, his small hands grabbing it before anyone could react. He ripped it from the priestess's grasp with a force that shouldn't have been possible for someone so small. "Aurelius!" Casha's voice cut through the shocked silence, sharp and cold, all pretense of gentleness gone. "You little brat! Give that back!" But Aurelius threw himself out of his father's arms. Marcus caught him just enough to set him down safely, and the boy hit the marble platform running. With both hands clutching the sacred Moonfire Circlet, he hurled it away from Casha like it burned his hands. The golden circlet sailed through the air, tumbling end over end, and crashed onto the marble with a sound like a bell tolling. It rolled down the platform steps 1, 2, 3, and skittered across the polished stone of Moonstone Plaza. Time seemed to stop as the crown came to rest at a pair of worn practical shoes. At Levvenia's feet, every eye in the courtyard turned to look at her. The Omega girl in the shabby gray dress, standing frozen in horror at the very edge of the crowd, with the Luna crown of Silver Crest lying at her feet like an offering. Levvenia's mind went blank with terror. This couldn't be happening. This was a nightmare. She'd be punished for this somehow, blamed for being in the wrong place, for existing at all. But before she could move, before she could even think, Aurelius was there. The little boy moved faster than anyone would have thought possible, his small legs pumping as he darted through the stunned crowd. He dodged grasping hands and pushed past adults frozen in shock, reaching Levvenia before his father or anyone else could stop him. He picked up the Moonfire Circlet with his small hands, and when he looked up at Levvenia, his golden eyes so like his father's shone with absolute certainty. "This is the real Luna," he said, his clear voice carrying across the suddenly silent courtyard. "The moon goddess told me. This one loves me." And then, while hundreds of high-ranking wolves watched in disbelief, while visiting dignitaries from neighboring packs stood with mouths agape, while his father remained frozen on the platform above them, Aurelius Constantine lifted the sacred crown above his head and placed it on Levvenia's dark hair. The crown settled onto her head like it had been waiting for her all along, like it had been made for her, like it finally, was home. And then the impossible happened. The Moonfire Circlet began to glow, not brightly, not dramatically, just a soft golden light that seemed to pulse in time with Levvenia's racing heartbeat. The ancient metal warmed against her skin, and for one crystalline moment, Levvenia felt the presence of something vast and ancient and filled with infinite love, the moon goddess. Every wolf in Moonstone Plaza felt it. The pull, the recognition, the rightness that couldn't be denied or explained away or dismissed as childish fancy. This wasn't politics or logic or careful planning. This was divine will made manifest. This was their Luna. This had always been their Luna. And standing there in her shabby gray dress with a glowing crown on her head and a 3-year-old holding her hand, Levvenia Aurelia felt the entire world shift beneath her feet. If you're already hooked and want to see what happens next in this impossible moment, hit that subscribe button right now, because what comes next will change everything for Levvenia, for Marcus, for little Aurelius, and for every single wolf in Silver Crest Pack. Drop a comment and tell me what city you're watching from, because we're all in this together, and you're going to need someone to hold on to for this emotional ride. No. Casha's voice cut through the stunned silence like a blade. No, that's impossible. She's an Omega. An Omega. She can't be. But the words died in her throat as the golden light from the Moonfire Circlet grew stronger. As every wolf in Moonstone Plaza continued to feel the undeniable pull of divine recognition, High Priestess Selene Moonshadow moved to stand beside Levvenia, her ancient eyes wide with wonder. "The crown has chosen," she said, her voice ringing with authority that silenced even Casha's protests. "In 500 years, the Moonfire Circlet has never glowed for anyone. Not once. The old legends speak of this, that when the true Luna stands before her pack, the crown will shine with the moon goddess's blessing." "Legends are just stories," Casha snapped, her perfect composure cracking like ice under pressure. She whirled toward Marcus, who still stood frozen on the platform. "Marcus, tell them this is ridiculous. That girl is nothing. She's nobody. You can't seriously be considering." "She's my friend," Aurelius interrupted, moving to stand in front of Levvenia protectively. His small body trembled, but his voice was fierce with the certainty only a child could possess. "And she's nice, and she makes Papa smile when she doesn't even know he's watching, and she gives me cookies when I'm sad, and the crown picked her. So there." The crowd erupted in murmurs, some shocked, some approving, some clearly scandalized. Levvenia stood there, wanting to sink into the earth and disappear, but unable to move, because Aurelius was holding her hand, and the crown on her head felt like an anchor, keeping her rooted in place. Marcus slowly descended from the platform. Each step seemed to cost him something. But he kept moving until he stood directly in front of Levvenia. Up close, she could see every detail of his face, the lines around his eyes from years of leadership, the gray threading through his dark hair, the old scars and new worries etched into his features. "What's your full name?" he asked quietly, his voice meant only for her despite the hundreds watching. "Levvenia Aurelia, Alpha." Her voice was barely a whisper. "How long have you been part of this pack?" 15 years, Alpha. Since my parents died in the western border skirmish. Something flickered across Marcus's face at that pain, perhaps, or recognition. "I remember that battle," he said softly. "I lost good people that day. I'm sorry for your loss." Levvenia stared at him in shock. No one had ever apologized to her for her parents' deaths. They'd just been omegas, casualties, acceptable losses. Marcus looked down at his son, still standing protectively in front of Levvenia. "Aurelius, do you understand what you've done?" "I picked the right Luna," Aurelius said with absolute confidence. "The one the moon goddess wanted, the one who will love us right." "And how do you know that?" "Because I asked the moon goddess every night, Papa. I asked her to help you find someone who would love you and love me and love our pack." His golden eyes, so like his father's, shone with tears and hope. "And then I met Levvenia and I just knew." "Don't you feel it, Papa? Don't you feel how right it is?" Marcus closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them again, they were glassy with unshed tears. He looked at Levvenia, really looked at her for the first time, and saw past the shabby dress and the omega status and the social impossibility of what his son was suggesting. He saw her, the woman who'd comforted his crying son when she had no obligation to do so, the woman who'd accepted a dandelion weed like it was a precious gift, the woman who stood before him now with terror and confusion and something that looked achingly like hope in her honey-colored eyes. And he felt it, the pull, the recognition, the bone-deep certainty that his son was right. "This is insane," Casha hissed, her voice rising with barely controlled rage. "You can't possibly be considering this. That Omega has been seducing your child to get to you. Can't you see that? She's been manipulating him, using him. Enough." The single word cracked like a whip. Marcus straightened to his full height, and suddenly he was every inch the alpha powerful, commanding, unmistakable in his authority. "You will not speak of Levvenia that way. You will not accuse her of manipulation without proof. And you will not call my son a fool for seeing what apparently none of us were wise enough to see." Casha went very still, her face pale with fury and humiliation. "You're choosing her over me. Over our agreement. Over the alliance our union would create. I'm choosing to honor my son's wisdom and the moon goddess's will," Marcus said quietly, but there was steel in his voice. "Yes, you'll regret this," Casha spat, her mask of civility finally shattering completely. "When your pack is led by an Omega who can't even hold a political conversation, when your allies abandon you for making a mockery of tradition, when everything falls apart, remember that I offered you strength, and you chose weakness." She ripped the outer layer of her ceremonial gown off and threw it at Marcus's feet. Then, with whatever dignity she had left, she stalked through the crowd toward the pack house. Her father, Beta Dimitri, followed with a look of pure venom directed at Marcus. But Marcus didn't seem to care. He turned back to Levvenia, who stood trembling with the crown still glowing softly on her head. "Levvenia Aurelia," he said formally, but his voice was gentle. "The crown has chosen you. My son has chosen you, and if you're willing, I would choose you too." "Alpha, I can't, I'm not qualified to." "None of us are qualified for the roles the moon goddess gives us," Marcus said. "But we try anyway. We learn, we grow, and we trust that there's a reason we've been called to this path." "But I'm an Omega," she whispered. "I don't know how to be Luna. I don't know politics or strategy, or, you know how to see people, to care about them, to love a lonely child who needed someone to care." Marcus reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His hand was warm and calloused, the hand of a warrior and a father. That's what a Luna is supposed to be. And I think you might be exactly the heart we've needed all along. I'm scared, Levvenia admitted, tears sliding down her cheeks. So am I, Marcus said. I've been scared for 3 years. But for the first time since my mate died, I feel like maybe I'm being guided towards something right. What if I fail? Then we'll fail together, and we'll get back up and try again. That's what family does. Papa? Aurelius tugged on Marcus's robe. Is Levvenia going to be my new mama now? Marcus looked at Levvenia, and she saw the question in his eyes, the hope, the possibility of something neither of them had expected but both desperately needed. That depends, Marcus said to his son, though his eyes never left Levvenia's face. Levvenia has to choose too. Being Luna isn't just about ceremonies and crowns. It's about commitment. To the pack, to me, to you. And it's her choice whether she wants that. Levvenia looked at Aurelius, who watched her with those hopeful golden eyes. She thought about all their secret conversations, all the joy she'd felt at making him smile. She looked at Marcus, at the vulnerability in his expression, at the way he held his son like he was the most precious thing in the world, and she felt it like coming home after being lost for years. Yes, she said, her voice stronger now. If you'll have me. Yes, we'll try. I'll probably make mistakes, and I definitely don't know what I'm doing. But yes. Aurelius launched himself at her, wrapping his small arms around her legs and laughing with pure joy. Marcus smiled, really smiled for the first time since the ceremony began, and the crown on Levvenia's head pulsed with warm golden light, as if the moon goddess herself was pleased. High Priestess Selene raised her hands for silence, her voice carrying across the stunned crowd. Let it be known throughout all territories, Silver Crest has found its Luna. The ceremony continued. Somehow, impossibly, it continued. Levvenia stood where Casha had stood moments before, the Moonfire Circlet still warm and glowing against her dark hair. High Priestess Selene's voice carried across Moonstone Plaza as she led modified vows that no one had ever prepared for. Do you, Levvenia Aurelia, accept the sacred duty of Luna? Her voice shook, her hands trembled. Kitchen grease still stained her simple gray dress. I do, and she meant it. Moon goddess help her. She meant every terrifying word. When the final blessing was spoken, Marcus turned to her. 500 wolves held their breath, his hand lifted to her face, gentle, careful, like she might shatter, and he pressed a kiss to her forehead. Not her lips. Her forehead. We'll take this slowly, he murmured against her skin. She almost collapsed with relief. The feast that followed felt like a fever dream. Levvenia sat at the head table in the Great Lodge, the same hall where she'd scrubbed floors on hands and knees just yesterday. High-ranking wolves who had looked straight through her for 15 years now leaned in with polite smiles and careful conversation. Luna Levvenia. You must try the venison. Luna Levvenia. How are you finding the evening? Luna Levvenia. Luna Levvenia. Luna Levvenia. The title felt like wearing someone else's skin. Then a familiar face appeared at the table's edge. Octavia, her kitchen mentor, stood with arms crossed and one eyebrow raised. Well, she said dryly, you certainly found a creative way out of dish duty. Levvenia laughed. Actually laughed loud and surprised and real. The tension that had been crushing her chest finally cracked open, and for one blessed moment, she could breathe. That night, servants led her to the Silverlight Suite. Luna's quarters. The rooms were larger than every space she'd ever occupied combined. Silk curtains. A bed that could fit 6 omegas. A balcony overlooking the western forests. Servants bowed as they left. Good night, Luna. She stood alone in the moonlight, still wearing her grease-stained dress, and wondered if she'd wake up tomorrow back in her cot in the Omega quarters. She didn't. Marcus kept his word about taking things slowly. He remained in the Alpha's den while she adjusted to the Silverlight Suite. They shared meals, discussed pack matters, built something that felt less like a mating and more like a partnership finding its footing. But Aurelius? Aurelius had no interest in slow, From day one, the 3-year-old attached himself to Levvenia like a barnacle to a ship's hull. He appeared at her door each morning with his stuffed wolf Lupus clutched to his chest. "Read me story, Mama Levvenia." "Mama Levvenia," she cried the first time he said it. And the second. And every time after that for an entire week. The pack's reaction was decidedly more mixed. Omegas watched with cautious hope one of their own had risen. But would it last? Warriors remained skeptical, their loyalty to tradition running deep. And the council? The council was divided. "This is unprecedented and unacceptable." Gamma Quintus Blackwood's voice echoed through the stone circle room during her first council meeting. He didn't bother hiding his disdain. No training, no education, no political connections whatsoever. He turned to Marcus. "How can an Omega possibly represent Silver Crest to other packs? No place to care. No place to care." Levvenia felt herself shrinking. 15 years of invisibility training screamed at her to bow her head, to agree, to disappear. Then Beta Titus stood. "I was wrong." The room went silent. Beta Titus, Marcus's most trusted advisor, the wolf who had championed Casha's selection, was speaking in her defense. "I was wrong about what this pack needed," he continued. "My own mate was a simple pack teacher. No noble blood. No political value." His voice softened. "Best decision I ever made." He looked at Levvenia directly. "I've watched her spend every morning learning the name of every pup in the pack. She asks questions instead of pretending she has answers. The moon goddess knew exactly what she was doing." Levvenia sat straighter. She had supporters. Real supporters beyond Marcus and Aurelius. Maybe, just maybe, she could actually do this. But earning a pack's trust is one thing. Keeping it? That's where the real trial begins. And what Levvenia does next will either prove Quintus right or silence him forever. Stay with me. Hit subscribe right now, because the transformation you're about to witness will change everything you believe about worth, power, and what it truly means to lead. The first weeks were brutal. Levvenia stumbled over protocol in council meetings, using the wrong titles, speaking out of turn, forgetting which elder required which formal address. She second-guessed every decision until her head ached. She stood before her mirror each morning in silk gowns that cost more than she'd earned in 5 years of kitchen work and saw an imposter staring back. But somewhere between the stumbles and the self-doubt, something unexpected happened. She stopped trying to lead with her head. She started leading with her heart. The first reform came quietly. Better housing in the servants' wing, actual beds instead of cots, windows that opened, fair wages for work that had always been taken for granted. "An Omega caring for Omegas," Gamma Quintus muttered. "How predictable." Levvenia ignored him. The second reform was bolder. A pack school at Little Paws Haven where pups of all ranks learned together. Alpha children beside Omega children. Warriors' sons next to servants' daughters. Teacher Nathaniel Brightwood, a gentle beta with infinite patience, led the classes. "They're just children," Levvenia told the skeptical council. "They don't know they're supposed to hate each other yet. Why teach them?" No one had a good answer. The third reform was the quietest, but perhaps the most powerful. Support systems for grieving wolves. Resources for new mothers. A network of care for the pack's most vulnerable members. Other territories began to watch. Alpha Lucian Stormfang of the Northern Ridge Pack openly mocked Silver Crest at first. "An Omega Luna? Marcus has lost his mind." But 3 months later, his own scouts reported decreased unrest, increased loyalty, pups thriving under the new school system. His mockery turned to grudging respect. Young Alpha Kieran Frostbite of the Eastern Shores became an unexpected ally, visiting Silver Crest to study their reforms. Female Alpha Zara Sunfire of the Southern Valley saw hope in Levvenia's rise, proof that the old ways weren't the only ways. Some still whispered that Silver Crest had grown weak. That compassion was just another word for vulnerability, Levvenia let them whisper. Because while the pack transformed around her, something else was transforming too. She and Marcus shared breakfast every morning with Aurelius between them, the little boy chattering about dreams, and Lupus, and whatever adventure he'd invented that day. They walked the Silverwood forest together in the evenings, their footsteps falling into rhythm without effort. They laughed at Aurelius's antics, his attempts to hunt butterflies, his solemn conversations with tree stumps, his absolute conviction that the moon was his personal friend. They debated pack policy late into the night. Disagreed. Compromised. Found middle ground. Slowly, carefully, they built something that looked remarkably like family. One evening, Levvenia stood on the Silverlight Suite balcony, the western forest stretching endlessly before her. Marcus joined her, silent at first, his presence warm and steady beside her. "Do you regret it?" she finally asked. "Choosing me over Casha? Over the political advantage?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Ask me in a year," he said. "I still don't know if this was brilliant or a spectacular mistake." Her heart sank, but he wasn't finished. "But my son is happy. Genuinely happy. For the first time since his mother died." He turned to look at her. "I sleep better than I have in 3 years. And when I look at you, I feel a possibility." "Possibility of what?" "I don't know yet." A small smile crossed his scarred face. "That's terrifying. But also exciting." Something shifted between them in that moonlit moment. Not love, not yet, but friendship, partnership, trust. Levvenia realized it was enough. For now, it was more than enough. She'd spent 15 years invisible, 15 years believing she was worthless. And now she stood beside an alpha who saw possibility when he looked at her. Maybe that's how love begins. Not with lightning bolts and fate, but with two people choosing to see each other clearly. But choosing each other is only the beginning. The real question is whether that choice can survive what's coming. Because the family they're building, it's about to face its greatest test. Stay with me. Subscribe now. 6 months since the impossible day. Levvenia still wasn't perfect. She stumbled over protocol, second-guessed herself in meetings, occasionally felt like an imposter wearing someone else's crown. But she was learning. Leading with her heart. Slowly, steadily earning the respect she'd never dared to want. And the pack? The pack was thriving. Loyalty had increased. Unrest had faded. Pups were growing up believing they could be anything, regardless of the rank they were born into. Other packs watched Silver Crest and began questioning their own rigid hierarchies. She and Marcus still kept separate rooms. There were no grand romantic gestures, no passionate declarations whispered in moonlight, just two broken people showing up every day, trying to honor their roles and each other. It was enough. It was more than enough. One evening, they sat together in the Alpha's den study, reviewing pack requests. Aurelius was supposed to be asleep. The fire crackled low. "Do you think we'll ever be true mates?" Levvenia asked quietly. Marcus set down his papers. "I had a true mate once. I don't know if I'm capable of that again." "That's not what I asked." She met his eyes. "I asked if you think we ever will be." He was silent. "I want us to be happy," she continued. "Whatever that looks like. I don't want to spend my life waiting for something that might never come and miss what we already have." Marcus studied her for a long moment. "When did you become so wise?" "I learned from your son. Our son." His voice was soft. "He's ours now." Something warm bloomed in her chest. Marcus stood and extended his hand. "Dance with me." "There's no music." "Then we'll make our own." She took his hand. They swayed together in the firelit study. Two people who hadn't chosen each other learning to choose each other anyway. Neither noticed the small figure in the doorway. Aurelius watched his parents dance. A sleepy smile spreading across his face. He clutched Lupus to his chest and whispered, "Thank you, Moon Goddess. For Mama Levvenia. For making Papa smile again." A beam of moonlight streamed through the window, bathing the dancing couple in silver light. A blessing. A confirmation. This is right. This is how it was always meant to be. Years would pass. Aurelius would grow tall beside a chosen mother and a healed father. Levvenia would become the Luna, that Silver Crest never knew they needed. She and Marcus would never receive the sacred mate bond from the moon goddess, but they would fall in love anyway. Slowly, freely. Choosing each other every single day. 3 more children would come: Isla Selene, Tiberius Marcus, Lyra Grace. A family built not on destiny, but on courage. Sometimes the best families are the ones we choose, and the ones that choose us back. You are seen. You matter. Your crown is waiting. You are enough. You have always been enough. If this story touched your heart, subscribe now. Because you deserve to be reminded that the most powerful magic isn't fate, it's choosing love anyway.